So as long as you put the money in play somehow and you don't go to Vegas and gamble it, if you put it in play, it'll help you grow your wealth. If your primary goal for the year was just to reduce taxes for this year, then you should do the cost setting. If I can take it now, I'd rather take it now than wait almost a lifetime to take it.
What if I told you that 70% of real estate investors are leaving millions of dollars on the table, and the IRS isn't going to tell them about it? Today's guest has helped over 26,000 clients save more than $5.1 billion in taxes, not through shady loopholes or risky schemes, but by using 100% IRS-approved strategy that's been hiding in plain sight since 1986. Jeff Hiatt is known as the Depreciation Doctor, and for good reason. He's one of the leading experts in cost segregation studies in the United States. His firm, MSC, has been doing this for nearly 30 years, and they've cracked the code on how to legally accelerate depreciation so real estate investors can stop sending checks to the IRS and start redeploying that capital into their next deal. Here's what makes this conversation different. Jeff isn't just going to tell you what cost segregation is. He's going to show you why your CPA probably doesn't know about it and why most investors are doing it wrong, and how you can go back to 1986. Yes, 1986 to retroactively grab deductions you've been sitting on for decades without amending a single tax return. One of his clients saved $4 million on a single transaction. Another investor turned an $8,000 study into a $50,000 tax refund, a 6x return on investment. And if you've bought, built, or renovated a property for more than $350,000 in depreciable basis, Jeff says you're leaving money on the table right now. If you're in real estate and you're tired of watching your profits vanish to taxes, if you've ever wondered how wealthy investors legally pay zero income tax year after year, this episode is your blueprint. Jeff's not here to sell you. He's here to educate you on the single biggest tax strategy most investors never use and why that needs to change today. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to the show, Jeff. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thank you, Captain Curt. Looking forward to talking with you tonight.
Yeah, I know we're in a mastermind together. What you do is something that took me years to figure out after I started my real estate journey. So I'm excited to share with a lot of listeners, and it's complicated, but not. I don't think enough investors know about it. So for someone who's never heard of cost segregation before, what's the simplest way to explain what you do, and why does it completely change the wealth equation for investors?
Great question. And a lot of people don't understand it really. And I think the reason is they just haven't had a chance to have it explained to them. And therefore it just sits in this dark box somewhere, and they might think about it every once in a while and don't do anything with it. But the simple way of explaining it is that I always ask the question, Curt, if I gave you the option of taking a deduction today or waiting 27 and a half or 39 years to take the same deduction, what would you choose? And invariably people go, well, gosh, if I can take it now, I'd rather take it now than wait almost a lifetime to take it. 27 and a half years or 39 years is almost a lifetime. So why not take some deduction now if the tax code will allow you?
Yeah, and it's the tax code's there, so you might as well use it, right?
A lot of people say that. A lot of famous wealthy people say that. And so the idea is that if the tax code allows this, you'd be somewhat foolish not to take advantage of it. Much like in Monopoly, when you go around Go, well, why would you choose not to pick up the $200? Well, if for those who know what Monopoly is as a game, some people may not now, but the bottom line is take it because it allows you to.
Yeah, it's great. So let's start with there's a stat that blew my mind. Only 30% of real estate investors who should be doing cost segregation actually do it. That means 70% are leaving money on the table. Why is this strategy, why is it so misunderstood, and why aren't more CPAs talking about it?
I think that can be a situation where you've got the investors consider taxes to be painful, and they don't want to think about it. So their brain kind of closes off and shuts down, and they don't want to think about taxes. So they put it off. And then you come up to, let's say, the March 15th deadline, and they finally get around to sending their accountant the stuff on March 10th, or the April 15th deadline, and they send it on April 10th. And now the accountant is under stress because he's just dumped a whole bunch of info, and he doesn't have time to think about it or explain anything. And he just found out his client just bought this property. So it doesn't come up then, and then nobody ever looks at it again, and you just have this snowball of nobody acting on it. And it's there, they could have, but they didn't. So there is an opportunity to step back and fix it.
Well, that's great. And it's number one is get educated about it, learn about it. And I think more investors need to be aware of it. So that's why we're hosting this podcast, right?
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I know for me, just being in the mastermind with you, I'm learning more and more about it. Every time I talk to you and every time we talk about your business, and it's growing rapidly. And I think a lot of that has to do with you getting out here, speaking on other podcasts, and just telling everybody what you do. I mean, you are an expert, the Depreciation Doctor, which I love. So you've done over 26,000 cost segregation studies is what I looked up. You've saved clients more than $5 billion. Walk us through.
With a B.
Yeah, with a B. Billion, not million, right? Walk us through what cost segregation actually is in layman terms, but more about accelerated appreciation rather than just the years.
Sure. Okay. Good
I know
point.
you explained it like over the lifetime, but what are you actually deducting?
So the way it works is with any type of investment property is the IRS allows you, or the tax code allows you, to take a deduction against income from that property every year for the next 27 and a half or 39 years. 27 and a half is for apartments, 39 years for everything else. And so that's straight line depreciation. So what cost seg does is identify the components of the building that are eligible to go into a faster life, 5 and 7 and 15 year. 15 years outside of the building, 5 and 7 are the items within the building that are eligible for a faster write-off. And so what I can explain is that the IRS says, or the tax code says, that a building component has to be 27 and a half or 39 years. That would include the walls, the windows, the roof, the doors, the HVAC, the plumbing for a bathroom, and electrical for basic lighting. Other than that, it's not structural. In other words, anything else can go into the 5 and 7 year or 15 year. So it's really exciting when people have these properties that they can go and accelerate a lot of depreciation. I can get into more detail if you like.
Yeah, that's good for now. We'll talk about some more details soon here. So you told a story about saving a defense contractor $4 million in taxes on one deal, and their tax advisor said, you have to teach this to people. What happened when you did that first seminar, and how did that change your business overnight?
Truly, that one introduction changed my life, okay? So we did a big defense contractor building that had been sold in a sale leaseback transaction. And so the buyers of these buildings, we saved them about $4 million of income tax. And their CPA, like you said, this is incredible. You have to do a seminar for the CPAs that I'm part of an association with. And so we did that seminar. This was in February of 2003, we did the seminar. And we went from doing 5 or 10 projects a year to doing a couple of hundred.
Wow, that is changing the business overnight.
Right. And when the guy said that when the CPA brought it up, my head said, oh my gosh, I can imagine nothing worse. I don't want to do that. But my mouth said, that sounds great. How would I do that? And he goes, I'm on the board. I'll get you in. And I was like, okay, here we go. And it worked incredibly well. And to this point now, we're 24 years in, and we do 1,500 studies a year.
Wow.
So we've gone from, it was an engineer, a CPA, and myself back in the day, and then we started doing a couple of hundred projects, and now we've got 27 qualified professionals doing site visits and 10 accountant types doing the tax part of that, breaking all those site visit numbers down.
In your company specifically, how many states are you in? Are you nationwide or?
Yes, so we're nationwide. We do work in every state. I think there's one or two states we haven't done, North Dakota being one, and I've got some friends out there working to steer me some projects out of North Dakota. We got to reel those in, but we're getting there. And so we do work, and not only in all the states, except the couple we haven't yet, but then we can do work internationally for folks that own international properties, but they live in the U.S. or pay U.S. taxes, so we can do cost seg for them too.
Gotcha. That's great. It's funny. I have my buddy does deals, builds warehouses like this one, some storage and multifamily in North Dakota. So I'll reach out to him and see if I can get that. He's a great guy. So I'll make that lead and get that last state for you, right? Let's use a real example. I buy a $1 million property. Land's worth $200,000. That leaves $800,000 in depreciable basis. Walk me through exactly what you do in the study and how much of that $800,000 on the building could I depreciate in year one?
So thank you for bringing up the big beautiful bill, because the big beautiful bill has reinstated 100% bonus depreciation, and so I would generally say, because we try to be conservative with our estimates going in. So if that was your building, I would say, hey Curt, when we do our project for you, your reallocation or your acceleration will be somewhere between 15 and 25%. That's safe. So let's say it's 20% at the end of the day. So of your 800,000, so you bought it for $1 million, sub out 20% for land. So now we're at 800,000, and we're going to accelerate for ease 10% into 5-year life, 10% into 15-year life. So 20%. That's 160,000. So you've got depreciable basis of 800, but now you sub out 160,000. That's an immediate deduction for you because of 100% bonus. So you get to take a deduction. Now, depending on what your status is as a real estate person, that could be a really great offset of either the income from just the rental properties you have, but if you're a real estate professional, now you're going to get to claim it against your W-2 or 1099 income, maybe from when you're flying.
Yeah.
There you go, baby.
Yep. I like the depreciation. I think a lot of people just focus on the income that they're going to make, where really one of the core values of real estate, or one of the values to it, is the depreciation side. It's to offset taxes. So why go work harder to make more money? In flipping homes, there's not a lot of depreciation. You can't capture it. The depreciation side of real estate is literally a business in its own, in my opinion.
It really is. And it's funny because, like you said earlier, there are so few people that understand it, that have done it. I was doing a presentation not 2 weeks ago, and there were 40 real estate brokers of long-term in the room listening to a continuing ed seminar I was doing for real estate folks. And of the 40, 23 of them owned rental real estate. 3 of them had heard of cost seg. 1 had used it.
Wow.
So it's mind-boggling because, yes, you've got the cash flow from the property. That's one leg of the, let's say, 3-legged stool. You've got the depreciation, and then you've got the appreciation. So there's the depreciation, which is the tax part, but then there's the long-term appreciation that goes along and gives them the value when they sell. So those 3 things make up the financial reason a lot of people invest in real estate. And why would you cut one of your legs off without taking advantage of it if you could?
Yeah, it's great advice. You said, like, cost segregation, it doesn't give you more depreciation. It just allows you to take it faster, right? But here's what I want to know. If I'm going to get to if I'm getting the same depreciation over 27 and a half years or 39 anyway, why does it matter if I take it now? I know we kind of talked about that, but what's the real financial impact of accelerating it?
Someone could take the position, and sometimes accountants do that. Sometimes they'll go, Curt, why would you want to do that? Gosh, you're going to get it anyway, and then you got to pay that guy Hiatt to do it. Just take it over time. Well, that's like saying, why not wait 40 years, 39 years to take a write-off? Do you want to send money to Washington, D.C. right now? If you could use that money, that 160,000 deduction, that's going to save you, let's say, 50 grand of taxes. Now you can take that 50 grand and fix up your property and now charge more short-term rental rate or charge a higher long-term rental rate. Or you can go buy your next property without having to go to the bank for as much money. So you can put that money into play, grow your own wealth, and then be a step closer to just gaining more financial freedom. So as long as you put the money in play somehow and you don't go to Vegas and gamble it, sorry, Vegas,
Yep.
Not besmirching you there, but if you put it in play, it'll help you grow your wealth.
I feel like when I first got into real estate, I outgrew a couple CPAs for that reason. I got a rental or two. I was depreciating residential at 27 and a half years. They never even brought this to me, like I was talking about before. And then I got some fourplexes and I did some flips and it didn't matter. But then for me, it was like I finally got a CPA that really knew real estate and also had a tax strategy. That's when I got into cost segs, which honestly was only like 2.5, 3 years ago. So 7 years into my real estate career is when I learned about it. Being in the right rooms is one of the things, right? So there's so much to learn, but I think it's probably the most underutilized tool out of any real estate investor. So for you listeners out there, if you're not doing cost segs, we'll get you Jeff's information later on, but it's a powerful tool. Bonus depreciation has been phasing down 100% in 2017 to 2022, 80% 23, 60% in 2024, 20% in 2025. But now we have the big, beautiful tax bill. So it's back to 100%, right?
Right.
But what's happening in Congress right now that investors should think about timing their cost segs? I don't understand the bill completely. Is it just for the next 5 years we keep 100? Is it indefinitely? Or should people still be taking advantage right now as much as they can with cost segs?
Well, the good news is, like you said, anytime there's a big tax law change, depending on its magnitude, they'll have to put in a sunset provision. They can't leave it in there forever because it would just be too potentially devastating for cash flow for the country. So they usually will put in a termination phase. And so that started, in, like you said, in 22. It was stepping down, and the big, beautiful bill brought it back. Well, at this moment, it's called permanent. Now, that's great because it's now called a permanent without a sunset provision anymore. But what permanent means in the tax code is it's permanent until the next, let's say, administration comes along and says, that's not permanent anymore. We're going to knock it back down. So it's in place for as long as it stays is the way to look at it. But there's no urgency per se. And there's no reason to do it like right now in 25 necessarily. If you need the losses, great, take them. But if you didn't get around to it, if you don't see this until sometime in 26, no big deal, because you can still do it until the extended due date of your tax return. So there are a lot of people on social media out there saying, hey, Curt, hurry up and do it. You better do it now. You better do it fast before year end. Well, that's not accurate. Don't fall for that.
So speaking on that topic, can someone go back to 1986 and grab depreciation that they never took without amending a tax return?
What a great question. Yes. As a matter of fact, you can go back to 86 as a technical point. I say that because I do hang out with a lot of CPAs, and so they need me to answer very precisely and very accurately. So the technically correct answer is yes, you can go back to 86. Now, the reality is you're probably not going to go back that far because, as the accounting world would call it, it's a timing difference. Like you just said, you're going to get the depreciation anyway. And so going back to 86 doesn't really help you. It's really the last 10 to 15 years is where you can grab that depreciation you haven't taken and take it now.
So let's say I bought a property in 2020, cost seg at the time, or bonus depreciation was 100%, but I never did a cost seg. It's now 2025, right? And bonus depreciation was supposed to be 40%. It's back to 100. So can I still go back and claim it 100% in 2020 within the 5 years?
Yes, absolutely. So
Okay.
you get to go back. So anytime you're talking about looking at a retroactive study, and that's called a change in accounting method, so you're not amending the tax return. And a lot of accountants don't realize this. I've had accountants tell me, oh my gosh, They can't amend going back that far. Well, you don't have to. It's called a change in accounting method. 3115 is technically the form. And so you go back and you get to grab whatever the bonus depreciation rate was at the date you put it in service. And your example was 2020. Like you said, 100% bonus, bam, you get to take that right now.
Hope you're enjoying this week's episode of the podcast. If you're into real estate investing and want to consider partnering with Captain Capital, go to our website, captaincapital.com/invest, fill out the simple form, and let's book a call with the team. Now, back to the show. Wow, that's such a great. So I've heard you mention something called the iron silo that lets investors track depreciation on every component of a building so that they can take abandonment losses when they renovate. We talked about this earlier today. Walk me through how that works and why most cost seg companies don't do this.
I think it's a time intensive labor to do that. And we've always done it, so it's easy for us because we're set up to do that. We've done 27,000 studies at this point, and so we just know how to do it quickly and efficiently because we have so many people doing it. The beauty of that is, so if our friend Jason has an apartment building and the roof is failing after he's owned it for 5 years, and he finally decides, hey, I'm going to take a write-off on that original roof. I'm going to get rid of it, put it in a dumpster, new roof goes on the building. Well, he has to spend new money on that roof. The new money that he spends on the roof is going on the depreciation schedule. He can take a write-off if his original roof had a value attributed to it. And our iron silo is where we allow our clients to have their information about their cost seg on an accessible platform that they can get to 24/7. Or they can call me up and say, hey, Jeff, can you resend that to me? I can't get a hold of it. I forgot my password, whatever it is. But we can get them back into it and help them take that write-off now. So they've only written off 5 years. Jason had only written off 5 years of that roof. He gets to take 22 years as a deduction, as an immediate loss, because the original roof went in the dumpster. It's a big deal. It's really big.
That is a real big deal. And it's interesting, the deeper I get into cost segs and tax advantages, like you are the expert, and I love having you on my team. I can't wait to use you for some cost segs, but there's so many interesting ways. It's not just a simple thing. Everybody has a different project or different commercial buildings with different fixtures, right? A short-term luxury rental that's residential is going to have different fixtures than this flex space industrial building. So there's always so much to learn, but that's why you hire someone like you that has been doing it so long.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've done everything from musical instrument manufacturers to clothing manufacturers to mutual fund companies to, we've done so many different interesting projects, and like you said, each one has its own nuance. Like, maybe an industrial building, a warehouse space might have a pickleball court, or might have car parking, or might have soundproof rooms with jazzy wall coverings, and plants growing in the back of them. So all these things are specialty items that wouldn't get a long life because they're just here to serve the purpose of that building. And so that's what we go in and identify.
So I do development mostly now. We did a cost seg study on a hotel. My partner kind of handled that. He does all the operations. And because the hotel has so many rooms and fixtures and beds and all of the different things and amenities, there's a lot more to it, it sounds like, to a hotel versus the industrial warehouses that I build that really don't have a whole lot in them.
Well, so what I always like to talk about is, if you will, I'm going to say, and keep in mind I have a horse in this race, so but I like to say the cost seg is kind of the sun, and there are a bunch of little orbiting planets around the sun, and those little orbiting planets are things like short-term rental. Okay, like you said, there's a lot of stuff in a short-term rental, and there's a nuance of short-term rental. Some people call it a loophole. I just call it the short-term rental advantage because it's not a loophole that was forgotten about. It's a legitimate part of the tax code. But what it allows somebody to do is use the losses that otherwise would have been become somewhat stranded against someone's personal 1099 or W-2 income. So there's that. But then the person that did that, all the accoutrements that go with the hotel or go with a short-term rental, there's a thing called de minimis. And that person, again, one of the little orbiting planets, can take a write-off of anything up to $2,500. So if that monitor is under $2,500, immediate write-off. The carpet, that's this throw carpet or this
rug or whatever,
whatever, under $2,500. These chairs, that end table, that light, I mean, whatever it is, under $2,500 can be immediately expensed and never has to show up on the depreciation schedule.
Wow.
That can be big because you're talking about a hotel. Mm-hmm. Think about all the items in the room of that hotel, the bed, the mattress, the bookcases, anything in there. Almost all of it is going to be under $2,500 each one. Now, they have to be invoiced properly and all of that, but that's a big deal.
Wow. And I mean, you're talking, our hotel is 130 rooms in 8 buildings with 3 pools, amenities and fireplaces and all these different things. So there's just so much to unpack. So I would imagine doing a cost seg on a property like that is a lot more time sensitive or time
intensive.
Intensive. There you go. Whereas a warehouse is much more simple. One of my questions for you would be, when I develop a warehouse, we pretty much are doing concrete flooring.
Right.
And then we have a retention pond in Texas they need to have for rain. There's an expense there. But what are some of the types of things that I can write off in my business, or for any listeners that have, commercial property that are mostly warehouses, industrial or flex space, I guess you could call it?
Right. And like you said, a lot of people would just look at it and go, well, there's nothing in the building. You just gave it as a vanilla box, as they call it, an empty shell. Well, that could be the case, but probably not, because you're going to drive off of the public right-of-way, off of the road, and once you're off of the public road, now you're on a driveway. Well, the driveway is going to be 15-year property, and then the compacted soil under the driveway, 15-year property. Then you mentioned a retention pond. Well, there's drainage ditches that get the water to that pond, 15-year property. There's culverts. There's riprap walls to keep erosion from happening. There's fences to keep people from falling in that retention pond. You're going to have shrubs and planting beds, probably, unless it's just bare bones. You're going to have trees around that were planted as part of a landscape plan. There's curbing, bollards, all kinds of stuff. Anything outside the property line, anything outside the building to the property line is going to be in that 15-year category.
Wow. So my hotel and all of my flex spaces have these big signs out front that are concrete. My hotel is just a massive sign. It's got lights. It's got little plants at the bottom with the hotel sign. And then our commercial signage, called like a monument sign, they have like 10 or 20 tenants on it, but it's a pretty big sign. Costs 50 to 80 grand of concrete and signage and lighting, electricity. So is some of that able to depreciate as well?
That would all go into 15-year life. Not only that, but then it's probably backlit, which means it's got electricity to it, which means it's got underground conduit, okay? And then it's got compacted soil around the conduit. So you get to take all of that in 15-year life. So people think, oh, it's not really that much. Well, it can be a lot of money when you start to add up the nickels and dimes that go along with it. When you come inside of your warehouse building, now maybe it's nothing, but maybe you put in pneumatic lines because you knew there was going to be hydraulics used, or there was going to be gas or compressed air needed. So the hydraulic systems can all be part of that under cement infrastructure that you didn't see walking in, but it's there. Or maybe the floor is canted for some reason as part of the manufacturing process. So
it just gets deeper every time I ask you more questions, which I absolutely love. So you said the sweet spot for cost seg is around $350,000 to $400,000 in depreciable basis. What if I own 15 single-family rentals that are all worth $150,000 each? It's like one of my Section 8 partners here, or friends. Can I aggregate them together and do one big cost seg study, or do I need to do them individually?
Well, the IRS would say you got to do them individually. And so if we had, in your example there, if we could make a bigger snowball out of that, yeah, the 150K would be below our kind of threshold that we would normally talk about. But we could make something work there in that scenario because you're talking about a bigger snowball.
Gotcha.
But if it was just a one-off, it's probably not going to look too exciting. But there's a way that with volume we can make things work.
Gotcha. Real estate professionals can use cost segs losses to offset the W-2 or the 1099 income, like we mentioned before. But what about someone who's not a real estate professional, like a doctor, lawyer, engineer? We talked about the short-term rental. They call it the loophole, but it's an actual tax code. How is it that they can write it off against like a high W-2? I mean, besides it, what does the tax code actually say, I guess?
About the short-term rental?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So you get into a scenario there where they're calling it an active trader business. So if it's an active trader business, now that person that owns the short-term rental and they're actively managing it, they're taking part in the management of that activity. It's part of their business. So they are allowed to use the losses created for the short-term rental against their 1099 or W-2. Whereas if it was the exact same building that wasn't short-term rental, but it was long-term rental, that's going to be 27 and a half years, and the losses created there would offset their passive income from that rental and or their other rentals. Okay, so they maybe have 6 of them. So they do one cost seg, create enough loss that it offsets the income from that one property, but then property 2, 3, 4, and 5, it could also offset income from there, but it would never, because they're just passive, like you're talking to doctor, lawyer, whatever, it would not offset their day job income.
Gotcha. And a lot of high incoming earners, pilots, doctors, lawyers, like we're talking about, it's hard to find tax write-offs in a W-2 job. But I like to teach, I own one short-term rental. I manage it myself to take advantage of that against my actual W-2. And that's what my CPA, who's really good in real estate, kind of coached me on, that I have to actually keep a log. I spend more time managing it than anybody else. So you can have a manager, but you actually have to spend more time managing it than anybody else in the business. So I've elected, I have one. It's literally primarily to use to offset taxes. And it works pretty well for me. So I think people should take advantage of that.
It's part of the tax code.
Yeah,
baby.
it's part of the tax code. If you're not a real estate professional, then that is one of the ways. Like even if you don't want to own a short-term rental and you don't want to operate the business, one can help you, just doing one.
Right.
Real estate, let's see. We just talked about that one. Sorry about that. Let's talk about recapture, because I don't know enough, and I know it's a big thing to think about when you're planning to do a cost seg study as part of your strategy. So if I do a cost seg and sell a property 3 years later, and what am I going to owe on taxes, and how do I avoid that? And when does like a 1031 come into play?
Well, another insightful question there. So what ends up happening is no matter which way you go, whether you go straight line depreciation or accelerated, there's going to be recapture as a part of a calculation. And what that means is you have to add back the depreciation you've already taken when you're figuring out, is it going to be capital gain or is it going to be ordinary income tax? So what I would normally say is if you said to me, hey, Jeff, we're buying a property, I'm going to put some paint on it and fix up the kitchen, and I'm going to sell it in a year or two. If it's going to be a short hold, I would say, unless you're going to do a 1031 and you know for sure you're going to sell it in a year or two, it's probably not worth doing because you're going to have to give back that tax. That recapture bite is going to come back at you. Now, it's not the end of the world, and it would not prevent you from selling, okay? But you would have to give back the tax. If your primary goal for the year was just to reduce taxes for this year, then you should do the cost seg and just understand you're going to have to give it back. But if you said, Jeff, I'm going to do a 1031, baby, well then in that case, do the cost seg, and then in a few years when you sell, okay, great, you're doing the 1031, you kick the can down the road, as it said, in the industry. So you're kicking the can of the tax on the gain down the road, but you also kick down the recapture down the road.
Wow.
And the pro tip on that is, and I say this joking somewhat, is to just keep kicking the can down the road until you croak, and then your kids get all those properties with a step up in basis, and you don't have to worry about the recapture or the tax on the gain as you've built that value.
So as long as that's someone's plan to continually 1031, that's the biggest benefit. Like they will actually not pay the tax because of the step down clause, right?
The step up, yeah.
Step up, yeah.
Yeah, you're right though. But I mean, and it doesn't have to be part of the plan. It could just happen. And I say it somewhat jokingly, but it is the way it works. Is that the kids, the generation 2, would get the step up, and that goes away.
Wow, you're good. I've seen people try and do cost seg studies themselves or use $500 tool online. You mentioned the IRS requires a physical site visit,
right,
and by a qualified professional.
Right.
What happens if I cut corners and get audited? How bad can it get?
Well, keep in mind the way that audit would play is not like you press send on the tax return or your accountant presses send on the tax return. Do you want me to stop?
No, you're good.
No? Okay. So it would be several years before you're audited. So now all of a sudden, you're 3 years after you've taken the deduction that the IRS is very, very likely to disallow. The reason they would disallow it is they can't confirm where that video, that remote cost seg was done. Because they can't tell, because they don't know who did the video, where it was done from. Was it actually at the property that it's supposed to be, 123 Main Street, or was it at 456 Washington Street? They can't tell. So that said, they typically say they're not going to allow those to be considered, and that you would lose that deduction on audit. So then you would owe the tax, then you would owe the penalties and the interest is compound. And that's going to be years later, not just 15 minutes after you press send.
Yeah, and everybody's trying to save money. We all are on certain things, and then there's certain things that you shouldn't cheap out on. And you know, I remember when I first started doing taxes, even when I bought my first property, I was like, oh, I need someone that's a little bit better, knows a little bit about rental properties. I think I was paying like $150 to do taxes years ago, but just to do regular W-2 tax.
Sure.
Then when I bought a property, it was like, oh, well, I charge $400 because now we can add a few things and then that account. And I think now between the couple businesses I own and this and that, I probably pay $5,000 just to do the taxes, not for my tax strategy. So if you would have told me 5 to 10 years ago, hey, you're going to be paying like $10,000 a year between tax strategy and just filing taxes, actually probably more now, but I would have said you're crazy, you know. But I think investors, they need to know, and they got to be okay with, hey, it's worth paying the professionals because my tax strategy saves me hundreds of thousands of dollars,
right,
on the right strategy. It isn't always, hey, Curt, go buy a car. I've done that before. I used Section 179 of the Vehicle Tax Code. Well, guess what? I did that 3 years in a row. And then I said, well, I'm kind of tired of spending money on cars that go down. So I just stopped doing that, right? Yeah. And I said, well, why don't I just start buying more properties that do depreciate, but actually property goes up in value, whether it's forced by remodeling or adding to it. So I see a lot of people on Instagram and just talk, oh, I use Section 178, I buy a G-Wagon. I mean, those cars are $200,000 and they plummet like $15,000 a year.
Yeah. As soon as you drive off the parking lot.
Right. Yeah. Off the parking lot, it's probably $40,000 right from the dealer, you know? So I kind of laugh at some of that. Maybe they're just crushing and they love spending money, but now I'm like, hey, I'm just going to stop buying cars, which I have. So I think people got to be aware, hey, watch out who you're listening to.
Well, yeah, exactly. There's always the bait on and the drive for the people on social media to get the clicks and the likes and all that stuff. And it's really about who's really doing the right thing. And you got to stay within the boundaries of the tax code. You can't just go, oh, I'm going to do this or that. I mean, it has to make sense, at least from my viewpoint. It needs to make sense financially for the long haul. And if you're not a car guy, if you don't just love owning G-Wagons and you want to have something that's really going to appreciate, real estate is the answer to me, but I've got a horse in the game, or in the race. So
yeah. And I mean, you own a bunch of properties yourself with your wife. So besides just having a business of doing cost segs and doing it very well, you're an actual active investor that owns a lot of properties. I believe it's 25 years now you've been investing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually closer to 30. We it's probably even more than that now. We bought our first two-family in Salem, Mass for $134,000. And it recently traded, not by us. We had sold it in 06, but we bought it in 91, sold it in 06. But and I think we sold it for, I want to say $350 or so, which was, we were thrilled, but it recently traded for like 1.3 mil.
Wow.
And it was an old 1700s two-family house in a great part of Salem, Mass. It was incredible, but it just, real estate goes up.
Yeah, continually, where cars only go down.
Right.
I shouldn't say only, because I know some people that buy sports cars that are limited, but that's so far and few between,
Right. And
but I'll stick to my real estate. I'll keep my cheaper cars these days. But you've worked with every asset class: apartments, hotels, self-storage, medical facilities, gas stations, indoor agriculture, I've heard. What asset classes typically give the highest cost seg results, and why does that matter?
Well, you want as much as possible to be accelerated. So at least, from the tax perspective. So the more stuff in the building, the better. So a hotel, like we were talking about earlier, the hotel is going to be more exciting from a tax perspective than the industrial building that doesn't have much in it. But that industrial building, if it had an indoor freezer system, because maybe they store frozen chicken in this building. Well, all of a sudden, that boring old industrial building becomes really exciting because now you've got all kinds of indoor refrigeration, because basically you have a freezer building inside of your industrial building. So that can become quite substantial too. But, when you're talking about anything from self-storage to medical office, maybe it's got a lot of the gas lines and drain, sinks and all of that for the rooms. So there's a lot. It just depends. Each has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and I think after being involved in a lot of different asset classes, I think someone shouldn't just choose an asset class solely for the taxes or the cost seg, unless it's a short-term rental. Like, I think if somebody has a W-2 high income job, they got to start with a short-term rental, or at least add it to their portfolio as part of their strategy. But for me, after I've already done mobile home parks, apartments, hotels, all that, I'm not just going to go buy hotels that are heavy in operations and employees and all of that. And then the expense ratio is like 50 to 55%, where for me, I'm drawn to industrial, which you would have to answer that, but I would guess there is, like we're talking about, there is a little bit less to depreciate, but there's still enough. But my expense ratio is 7 to 10% a year, and it's triple net, and I'm not dealing with as much brain damage as what we talk about a lot. So for someone listening to this is like, man, I want to get the most depreciation I can. I think my advice would be like, yes, that is part of the game, but I think you should also be in asset classes that you actually want to be in and that they fit your goal. But there is depreciation in every asset class.
Every asset class. Period. End of sentence. I can't think of one asset class that would not give depreciation that would make sense if we're above that threshold of, say, 300, 350. But you nailed it right there. Now, some folks might just get really good at building, as they're somewhat called in the industry, the dock and the boxes, the little medical office buildings that are on a pad site out in front of the, big box retail stores, and they just build them and they're like cookie cutters. And if that's what they're into and they can do it and they can do it profitably, great. Then there's a lot of benefit there for them, and they just lease them to them.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of like a rinse and repeat. And I think that a lot of newer investors, including myself, there's one thing that's like scaling. There's two things. There's one, you could get really good at one thing.
Right.
But then if you don't really like that one thing, or you think you'd be better at a bigger asset class, I'd encourage people to kind of focus on one thing, but it's okay to scale, or to improve. So I started in single family. Then I went to duplexes. Then it was fourplexes, small multifamily, mobile home parks. So I've done a lot of it. But I know, like, I wish I would have found my asset class earlier, because I love the asset class that I'm building and leasing and everything. But I think people have to experiment a little, but be very careful with being in 4 different asset classes.
Well, especially if they're doing the development. You know, if they're able to find an asset, a building that is of good value, and they can confirm, you know, maybe they use Jason as a real estate broker that's going to give them a good value, and know, oh, that one's overpriced, but oh, the one down the street, that one's a good value. You should go for that one. If you're getting them at a good price, you can afford to do them, you know, one off this and one off that. But if you're doing what you're doing, which is construction, to be dabbling in industrial, and then dabbling in a medical, and then, oh, I'm going to try a dental office. Oh, and then I'm going to try this. That's probably going to have you spread too thin on the brain damage problem of just having to learn each new different little asset class.
Because they all have their nuances, right? And like your tenant is, even though industrial has a lot of tenants, medical, if you're developing medical offices or medical buildings, now you got limited tenants. You still maybe have a couple different ones. You got dentists, you got chiropractors, you got this, but you still have a small tenant base. So in my opinion, I see a lot of investors out there trying to just expand too quick and doing too many things. And like I said, I did that to myself. And then all of a sudden you got all these different projects and you're really just not crushing it in one area. And that's what I found myself. So you're someone that sees all these different asset classes. For your personal portfolio, what do you like and what kind of assets do you invest in?
We've done everything from retail. Again, we've done it one-off because I happen to be talking to people that all of a sudden say, yeah, I'm thinking about selling. Okay, well, what would you want for that? You know, and it leads to a conversation. And then my wife and I talk it over and we say, okay, we'll do that or we won't do that. You know, oh, that's within our budgetary means now, or it's not. But, you know, we've got office, we've got industrial, we've got retail. So whatever it is, if we feel like it's a good value, and we've bought some stuff via 1031 and other stuff just freestanding, kind of deadlift. We've used self-directed IRAs. We've used kind of all of the little tools. And that's kind of good because we've got that experience. And my wife does all the management for us. So she's the real estate professional for us. And we've got enough properties that she spends a lot of time doing that. And that helps us with the real estate professional designation.
Yeah, that's great. Every Thursday you post Thor Thursday on Instagram, where your German Shepherd finds tax deductions. I think it's great. But beyond the fun branding, what's one cost seg strategy or tip that most investors don't know about that you wish they did?
Well, just the ability for people to understand that these laws are there for them. They should use them, and at least in my mind, they should use them. Why would they not want to? And when it comes down to it, it could be anything from just understanding how they can step back in time, because a lot of people get bound up on, I didn't do it already, I'm out of luck. I've talked to so many people that think, are you kidding me? Or they say, are you kidding me? My accountant didn't bring this up to me 5 years ago and I can still go fix it. That's probably the biggest thing that I wish more people just would understand and could take advantage of. Because why let it sit out there? You've left it stranded out there 5 years. Take it now. Because I like to see people redeploy that money and go get into their next building efficiently.
Yeah, and like you were talking about before, the 27 and a half or 39 years doesn't help the velocity of capital. And as a newer investor, when I was new, I understand investing in compound interest. Those were like the good terms I wanted to learn, and they meant a lot, but I didn't understand what velocity of capital was. It was like, great, refi, I was doing BRRRRs in the beginning. So I remodel and then I'd refinance out and take the capital. I was kind of doing velocity of capital, but I hear more people talking about it now is the churn. So you can really build a portfolio quicker by utilizing cost segregations, refinances, where that capital comes back and it's not taxed.
Right.
And you can use all these together.
It just stacks up the benefits, and the ability then when you do the renovations down the road, you're taking advantage of the deductions for that, or any kind of growth strategy that somebody wants to implement. This is all just part of the tools in the tool shed.
Yep.
And just why not use them? And Curt, I got to compliment you. You know the topic, deep. It's not like you just reading it off a screen. You actually have experienced this, because I can tell by the questions you're asking me about how you went from single family to multi to a fourplex to, and now you're into industrial and you're loving it. And that's the way it goes. You'll find something that you're into and you can start to roll with it.
Yeah, and I think for me, my experience, I'm a pilot. It's a high income earner. I knew I always wanted to be in real estate to just grow a portfolio, but I read Rich Dad Poor Dad like everybody else did. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. And my initial thought was, hey, if I could get like 5 rental houses in Southern California where I live, they're expensive, but if I could get 5 and then not know anything about taxes or cost seg, it was more like, if I could get 5 and in 30 years, they could be paid off, because a 30-year mortgage is pretty common, right? And then in 30 years, when I'm older, which retired was really the goal, right?
Right.
At 65, I'll retire. I'll have 5 rental houses worth a bunch of money. There'll be cash flow in this. And as I got further along down my journey of really education,
right? And
that's what our industry needs. If you're going to be successful, you need to educate yourself. Then I started going, wow, wait, hold on. People are making more money by going bigger. And when I came back to it, I go, wait, Monopoly. I was good at that game. But instead of having 3 houses, I want the hotel.
Right.
So even now, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever buy a house ever again unless it's like family vacation house. Like I don't want to stack a bunch of short-term rentals. For me, I actually want to lower the W-2 income or remove it and continue building my commercial real estate for myself, and a lot of listeners out here, if you're not in commercial or industrial, that's fine. It may not be for you, but if you're flipping homes like I was and answering the phone 60 or 80 times a day from subcontractors, contractors, permits, the bank, this and that, I just felt like even though I was profitable, it wore me out. And with having 2 kids at home, like I haven't flipped a house in probably 3 years, but I'd say 3 or 4, probably 4. And I'm glad I haven't, and I don't think I'd ever do another one. I'm doing a development where the house is existing right now next to San Diego State, and would be building a big ADU. And I'm not running it, thank God. So I'm not going to answer any of the phone calls from contractors. Like my I'm bringing the money and he's bringing the expertise. But I think people should really find an asset class they actually love and that they really want to continue to learn and get deeper on. And like you said, I think having the right tax strategist, I think having a cost seg study in your pocket, just like Jeff is in mine now. And then also Mike Thorpe was in our room. He is now, I called him my commercial loan broker, which he is, but his presentation today is like, I'm actually like your partner. I am an equity debt partner consultant. I was so happy to pay his fee on my current development that the banks just didn't really like. Banks tightened up in April.
Yep.
And I actually backed out of a deal and left $45,000 on the table. I had to because of banking. It wasn't because of the deal. It wasn't because of anything else. And I just said, there's not enough profit in it because banks tightened up at the beginning of the year. It's getting a little better with some rates coming down. I think next year will be good. But I think any listeners out here, you got to build a team.
Right.
And you got to build a team of people that really know what they're doing.
And they're passionate about it.
I agree.
Not just like, oh yeah, they know what they're doing, but they're not really into it. You want somebody that loves what they're doing. And that's what, like you said, Mike Thorpe is amazing because he's really knowledgeable. He knows the ins and outs, where the speed bumps are, where the landmines are, and how to navigate that. Mm-hmm. So he's great. I fully agree with you there. And then, anybody else that's in that space.
Yeah. I think a good broker, whether it's residential, commercial, but find a broker that's an expert in that space. So if a multifamily broker reaches out to me, let's even say a wholesaler, I get a lot of messages from wholesalers. Hey, I see you buy land in Texas. Yes, but they're like residential wholesaler. They're not. I don't want to spend my time teaching them my whole underwriting of flex space, which I developed anyway. So I typically go to wholesalers that only do industrial land. I don't need them to necessarily, as long as I can build industrial on it, I will put it in my system and do my couple metrics that we do for a quick underwriting. But I found myself, you got to have a team of brokers, or at least one really good broker, which I have in Houston. And now I'm going to expand and get a few other opinions or different brokers to bring me land. But my builder is my builder. I mean, part of my last 90 days was I have vetted, I think, 4 different builders in my area specifically, and every single one, even though they were great and they seemed organized, their rates were higher. So I said, well, good. I got a good broker with good rates, but I had to give them some competition.
Sure.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But I agree with you. I think people that are passionate, that like care. I've definitely done plenty of deals with people that didn't. You know, a lot of contractors don't care. They're throwing hammers, but they're definitely out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's just like you said, building the team, having the right folks around you, as they say, be in the right room with the right quality people, and you can really take some of the rough edges off of potential mistakes that might have happened. But that person might advise you, well, yeah, you can do it that way, but you face this risk, whatever that risk might be. Could be zoning risk, it could be environmental risk, whatever it is. Somebody that really understands it and that is caring about you, because now they're part of your team. They're going to give you good advice and help you keep things moving the right way. When
should someone come to you and use your services? Not just like, here's the deeper part of the question. Instead of just coming like, hey, I got a property, I need a cost seg. I feel like you offer more than that. And that's why I'm drawn to your services to an extent where I think someone should come to you before maybe they buy the property, especially if it's a bigger commercial building. Like, I know I'm going to come to you on my next building if I buy an existing or develop and go, hey, here's the property I'm thinking. If we do this and this and this, can you tell us or give us a rough estimate of what kind of things we can depreciate or how much I could expect? And here's the reason. It's kind of a long question, but I'm learning now that I own a bunch of land and I'm not putting the building, we're building the buildings next month. So the building will go up in, say it's done in April. That's when the building is actually put in use when I get my close of occupancy. So when should a real estate investor engage your services? And do you guys do any of the preemptive before a purchase maybe?
We always do that.
Okay.
And some people go, oh, I don't want to bother you with that until we're closed or until it's done. Well, that's, in my world, that's an occupational hazard that we're going to go ahead and put together a proposal even though the deal may not close, because we want to help. We want to be on your team. We want to be part of that team. And so we want to give you as much information as we can. So we'll say, hey, Curt, here on the low end is what the low end reallocation might be or acceleration. But then here's on the high end. And if you build it out with these types of finishes or these types of accoutrements in the building, it's going to be at this end. Or if you make it more minimalist, it's going to be at that end. And so we can help guide you there if that's what you're looking for. Or you might say, here's what I'm doing. Here's the list of everything that's going in. And we'd go, okay, here you go. And we can give guidance. And we do that all the time. And complimentary for any of your listeners or watchers, whatever this is, Zoom or podcast.
Yeah, they do both. Yeah, YouTube and a lot of listeners driving. I love that because that was not something that I ever thought about, was coming to get your services before. But now that I'm looking at buying some existing, I'm going to want to know. And a lot of the existing I'm buying, like I want it to need new paint, new doors, like industrial, there's not a ton you can do, but there are a few. I want to add a monument sign. I want to add lighting up. Maybe it's security gates around the property. So that's probably something I'll be engaging with you, in the coming year for 2026 to be looking at those. Because I think, especially for someone like my company that raises money from investors, I kind of want to know, hey, what's a typical depreciation that they could expect on year 1 or year 2?
Right. Absolutely. And we can give you that so you can roll it into your pro forma so that when you're talking to your potential investor, and maybe that potential investor, maybe it's not your best friend from high school or college, maybe it's somebody that you know, and he's looking at 4 or 5 different deals, and you happen to be one of those deals. Well, if you are explaining how this can benefit him more from a tax perspective than the other 3 or 4 deals that he's looking at, he's more likely to go with you there. Mm-hmm. And this would apply to any of the folks hearing this, would be, we can give you that, give them that estimate just to have a better package when they're going out there to the market.
Yeah, because there's some passive investors that really just have a tax problem and they need to solve that like before the end of the year. We heard people this weekend, I know people going, hey, I have a tax problem, I need to solve it by the end of the year. It's like, we don't have anything like that. Our deals take a little bit longer, but there's definitely plenty of investors out there that are trying to close out by the end of the year. Our hotel, I think we closed like 3 days before Christmas. We really wanted to close and get that year's depreciation. And we got the same depreciation on that hotel closing in December as we would have in January the year before.
You got that is correct.
Yeah. So I got a couple last questions where we wrap it up. You shared so much knowledge today. I personally learned a lot, so I love that. What keeps you up at night?
Well, it used to be that I was concerned that all of a sudden this little bit of the tax code was just going to get stripped away. But that was back in 99 to 2000, even up to probably 2005. And then as time has progressed, it's just where we thought, oh, there's no way this is going to keep going. Back then, it's not only kept going, but they keep making it better. The whole bonus for existing buildings that was never around. Bonus was only around for new construction, but now it's for new construction, yes, but also for existing buildings. So what keeps me up at night now? Just, making sure that we can keep up with the deal flow and making sure that our team is well deployed and we've got a great team in the back office that really helps make all of the gears work together and not grinding and tearing each other apart with misaligned deadlines and everything. So we've got a great team.
You're doing so many deals with 27 they're not agents. What would you call them?
Qualified professionals that go out.
That's a big team. So you got a big wheel turning. Obviously your business continues to grow, which is great. What's one book that you've read that's made a big impact on you that you think listeners should read?
Well, one you mentioned, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The Millionaire Next Door is another great one, and Think and Grow Rich is another great one. They're all like as it's been said, you don't know the dots that led you. You don't know the path until you look backward. You don't know where things are going until you look in the back and you go, oh, that was a pivotal book. That was a pivotal event in my life, until you're looking backward. And those books, the ones that I just mentioned, are ones that, kind of shaped my thought process. And those are really good books for anybody that's considering entrepreneurship of any type, whether it's real estate or getting into, Domino's Pizzas or Taco Bell's or whatever they're going to do. Those are some good books to just frame your brain.
Yeah, they kind of, those books, I've read all of them. The first one I read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't think I read the others for many years later. Right. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the one I feel, and for me, for sure, it starts changing your brain as an employee. Right. It talks about it. Literally, the book lays that out. Like, hey, my dad was an employee, had a house, bought nicer cars, but he was always like house poor. And I understand that, where his friend's dad, who was the rich dad, was the businessman that employed everybody in the town and did a lot of charity and didn't go to college. So I think anybody should at minimum start with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I love that. And I'll drop all 3 of those books in the notes so people can just click on the link and go view them. I think reading's powerful. I go through stages of reading a lot and then kind of getting bored of books, I guess. And then I switch to podcasts. So right now I've been on a big podcast kick. Now I'm kind of getting bored in my car. Like I do them on drives a lot, which is great. Now I'm kind of getting bored where I want to go back to books. So I like to get a little stack of books, and for me that works. But One final last question. How do you want to be remembered?
I've always tried. So that one CPA back in the day, who helped us get to that CPA organization and start to teach there, that person really, as I said earlier, changed my life because it really accelerated our growth. That probably wouldn't have happened if we didn't do that 20 some odd years ago. I try to help pay that forward anytime I can for young people out there that are trying to get into the real estate. I'll spend a lot of time with them just giving them whatever coaching and guidance I can, just because I think it's important that folks that are already in some sort of business that are having some success with it, pay that forward. Somebody helped you get to where you are, and so I try to do that, to be that person. And sometimes people don't take the advice and they kind of flounder, and I help as far as I can, but it's their life. They got to do their own thing. They, as the saying goes, you do you.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, you do you. So
Yeah, you can lead the horse to the water. You can't make him drink. Right?
That's a better way of saying it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think that's such a great way to live, is just helping other people where you can. And for me, I'm real big into relationships, and sometimes I look at that and I wonder, like, for example, my builder, I really like him. I know his family now, and all those things are great. And like I talked about this weekend, where it's like, well, it's not, I'm going to bring in other brokers, but it's not like to replace him. It's just, I personally need to look at more land deals. But I kind of pour into relationships. Mike Thorpe is another one that we talked about. I'm referring him all my business. I'm in like flex space groups. That's strictly what I build right now. And so when somebody says, hey, I need a flex space bank. And I go, hey, I don't have a bank. I have the best broker you could ever deal with. And that's who I'm sending to him. It takes me zero effort, really, to just, all I have to do is text someone or message them his email or phone. Mostly it's email. That way they can get in touch. And it takes me like 10 seconds to do that. So if someone provides service to me at a really good high level where I feel like they care, not just, hey, solve the problem, I pay you, you're on your way. I want to feel like someone that cares, because I care about people. So my investors know I care about them. I treat them like family. And I think if people can take that in life and just do life that way, the world would be a better place, or their business is going to be just grow, and they're going to be able to sleep better at night.
Right. I fully agree with you.
Yeah. So I love learning about you. So thanks so much, Jeff, for where can people get in touch with you, and what's your business name?
So it's MSC. So we're MSC Cost Segregation Consultants, and we've been around for almost since the industry started. My social media name is Depreciation Doctor on Instagram, or Jeff Hiatt. I think it's Jeff Hiatt 1 on Facebook, but you can track me down there. And then I'm on TikTok and other stuff. My daughter is helping me get into the social media more, so I'm even on TikTok now, which is crazy. And so we're doing a lot with that. And my email address, jdh@costsegstudies.com. And I'm sure you can put my links in there and all that stuff, so that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll throw everything in the show notes there, and I'll tag you in some of the videos that we'll post from this. I really appreciate your time before you fly out on a red eye from our meeting. It's been a long week for us, but you shared so much knowledge, and it's just invaluable. It's just so great.
Well, Captain Kirk, I really appreciate it, so thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks, listeners. Hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. We'll see you next week on the next one.